Human civilian knew the plan. Evacuate the young and old. Everyone else fights. A shopkeeper in his 60s threw homemade explosives from his window. A teacher in her 30s led a squad of volunteers with hunting rifles. A doctor worked in a makeshift hospital while fighting off alien patrols. Everyone became a soldier. The Vexar had conquered 17 civilizations. None of them fought like this. Other species had militaries that surrendered when outnumbered. Humans just fought harder. In a factory on the edge of Seoul, engineer Jin Woo-han worked frantically. Before the invasion, he built cars. Now he built weapons. The factory floor became an armory. Assembly lines that made engines now made railguns. Robots that painted vehicles now loaded ammunition. Jin Woo was not a soldier. He was just a man who knew how to build things. But he understood something important. Humans were good at two things: adapting and making tools. The aliens had better technology, so Jin Woo would make human technology better. He took industrial plasma cutters and turned them into weapons. Mining lasers became anti-armor guns. Civilian drones got retrofitted with explosives. If it could be weaponized, Jin Woo weaponized it. His workers moved with desperate speed. Every hour, new weapons rolled off the production line. Trucks carried them to the front lines. Soldiers traded their old rifles for new ones. The weapons were crude but effective. A Vexar patrol entered the factory district. They expected minimal resistance. Instead, they faced concentrated fire from weapons that should not exist. Plasma bolts melted their armor. Railgun rounds punched through their shields. Explosive drones struck from above. The patrol was destroyed in minutes. Back in her command center, Dr. Hyun Park monitored the global situation. The news was bad, but not as bad as predicted. Humans were losing ground in every city, but they were losing it slowly, very slowly. Thelians had calculated they would control all major cities within 12 hours. They were now an hour 20, and they controlled maybe 40%. Human resistance was exceeding every projection. Hygiene continued studying the enemy. She intercepted more communications. Listened to their commanders. They were frustrated, confused, starting to worry. One word kept appearing in their reports: unexpected. Everything about humanity was unexpected. The aliens expected armies to fight them. Instead, entire populations fought. They expected logic and calculation. Instead, they got emotion and stubbornness. They expected surrender after heavy losses. Instead, humans fought harder when losing. Heijin smiled grimly. She was beginning to understand something the aliens never would. Humans did not fight because they thought they could win. They fought because not fighting was worse than death. On the streets of Seoul, Sujin pulled her Marines back to a new position. They had lost the downtown sector, but it took the aliens 8 hours instead of 2. 8 hours of brutal fighting, 8 hours of casualties on both sides? Her company was down to 90 soldiers. Over half dead or wounded, but the aliens lost hundreds, maybe thousands. Sujin did the math. If every unit fought like hers, humanity could actually slow this invasion to a crawl. She set up in a hospital building. The doctors refused to evacuate. They stayed to treat wounded soldiers. Sujin positioned her Marines at every entrance. The aliens would have to fight for every room, every floor, every inch. The next Vexar wave came at dawn. Sujin watched them advance through her scope. They moved more carefully now. Not the confident march of conquerors. The cautious approach of soldiers who had learned to respect their enemy. Good. She thought they should be afraid. The battle for the hospital lasted 6 hours. The Vexar took it floor by floor. The humans made them pay for every step. Wounded soldiers fought from their hospital beds. Doctors threw medical supplies that had been rigged as explosives. Nurses shot aliens with rifles handed to them by dying Marines. Sujin was the last one out. She crawled through a service tunnel with 2 wounded Marines. Behind her, the hospital burned, but the aliens had taken massive casualties. And more importantly, they had taken 6 hours to capture one building. At this rate, conquering Earth would take months, maybe years. The Vexar High Command started to realize they had made a terrible miscalculation. In orbit, General Dongmin Choi reviewed the reports from across the planet. The pattern was clear. Humans were not winning, but they were not losing fast enough. Every city became a meat grinder. Every street a battlefield. He looked at casualty numbers. They were horrible. Tens of thousands of humans dead, but alien casualties were just as bad. The Vexar had lost more soldiers in one day on Earth than they lost conquering the last 3 civilizations combined. The general made a decision. He sent a message to all units. Keep fighting. Every hour matters. Help is coming. He did not mention what help. He did not mention when. He just needed his soldiers to hold on a little longer. In her lab, Heijin made another discovery. The Vexar were calling for reinforcements. They had not planned for this level of resistance. They needed more soldiers, more ships, more weapons. She calculated the timeline. Reinforcements would arrive in 72 hours. When they did, humanity would face twice as many enemies, maybe 3 times as many. Heijin sent her analysis to command. They needed to change something fast because in 3 days the war would get much worse. But humans had learned something important in that first day. The aliens could be hurt. They could be slowed. They could be made to pay dearly for every victory. Sujin regrouped her surviving Marines in a subway station. 90 soldiers became 45. She looked at their exhausted faces. They had been fighting for 30 hours straight. One young Marine asked the question. They all thought, can we actually win this? Sujin thought about lying, thought about giving them hope, but she respected them too much for that. I do not know, she said honestly, but I know we can make them regret ever coming here. The Marines nodded. That was enough. They picked up their weapons and prepared for the next fight because that was what humans did. They fought, even when losing, especially when losing. Dr. Heijin Park had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes burned. Her hands shook from too much coffee. But she kept working. In her lab, surrounded by computers and alien biological samples, she was hunting for a weakness. The Vexter seemed unstoppable. Their armor was nearly perfect. Their shields absorbed most weapons. Their soldiers were bigger and stronger than humans. But Heijin knew something important. Every living thing had weaknesses. She just needed to find theirs. She studied samples taken from dead aliens, their blood, their tissue, their DNA. She compared it to every Earth pathogen in her database. Most showed no effect. The Vextar immune system was incredibly strong. But then she found something. A modified flu virus. It did not kill the aliens, but it made them sick. Very sick. Their reaction time slowed. Their accuracy dropped. Their coordination failed. Heijin ran the test 5 times. Their results were consistent. She had found a weapon that could level the battlefield. She contacted General Dongman Choi immediately. The general listened to her report. Then he asked the hard question. Could this virus hurt humans? Heijin shook her head. The virus was designed to only affect Vexar biology. It was harmless to people. The general gave the order. Mass the virus. Distribute it through every water system. Every air conditioning unit, every ventilation shaft in occupied zones. Make the aliens wish they had never breathed Earth's air. Within 24 hours, the virus spread through alien-controlled areas. The Vexar started getting sick, not dying, but weakened. Their perfect soldiers became clumsy. Their precise formations became chaotic. Human soldiers noticed the change immediately. Aliens who could shoot with perfect accuracy now missed half their shots. Aliens who moved like machines now stumbled. The playing field was shifting. In orbit, Commander Taejo Kim watched the alien fleet with calculating eyes. His patrol ship had joined with other survivors to form a small battle group. 20 ships total, still pathetically outnumbered. But Taejo had a plan. He had been studying the alien fleet for days, watching their patterns, learning their habits. The Vexar were disciplined and predictable. They followed protocols exactly. That was their strength, but also their weakness. Joe had noticed something. The alien flagship had the most powerful shields in the fleet, but it also had a shield generator that needed constant cooling, and the cooling system had an external relay. A small target, easy to miss unless you knew where to look. He called his captains together on a secure channel, explained his plan. It was insane, probably suicidal. Several ships. The morning started like any other day for Commander Cho Kim. He sat in the captain's chair of the EDS Indomitable, drinking his 3rd cup of coffee and reviewing patrol reports. His ship floated in orbit between Earth and the Moon, one of 12 vessels keeping watch over humanity's home system. It was boring work. Nothing ever happened out there. Then everything changed. The space around Earth rippled like water. Cho's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. His sensors screamed warnings. The view screen filled with ships. Hundreds of them. Each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They appeared in perfect formation, blocking out the stars. His communications officer spoke in a shaky voice. A message was coming through. Joe nodded and the alien transmission filled the bridge. The voice was cold and mechanical. It spoke perfect English somehow. The aliens called themselves the Vexar. They said, Earth now belonged to their empire. All humans must surrender immediately. Any resistance would result in complete destruction. They gave humanity 1 hour to respond. Tijo looked at his crew. Young faces stared back at him. Fear filled their eyes, but also determination. He thought about his family back on Earth, his wife and 2 children. He thought about every person on the planet below. He opened a channel to Earth Defense Command. The response came quickly. Fight by time for evacuation. Every second mattered. Joe turned to his crew and smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who knew what came next. He gave the order to charge weapons. The Indomitable was not a warship. It was a patrol vessel with light weapons. Against the massive alien fleet, it was like a mouse challenging an elephant. But Tejo had studied military history. He knew that size was not everything. He directed his ship toward the alien formation. The other patrol vessels followed. 12 small ships against hundreds. The aliens probably thought humans were insane. Maybe they were right. On Earth, Dr. Ha-Jin Park ran through the halls of the Xenobiology Research Center in Seoul. Alarms blared throughout the building. Her team scrambled to their stations. Everyone knew what the alarms meant. First contact finally happening, and it was not friendly. Ha-Jin had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. She studied every theory about alien life. She built protocols for communication and understanding. She always imagined first contact would be peaceful. She was wrong. Her computers intercepted the alien broadcast. She listened to their demands and felt her stomach turn. Surrender or die. Nothing about negotiation. Nothing about peace. Just orders from conquerors. But Heian was Ashantist. She did not panic. She went to work. While others focused on weapons and defense, she focused on information. Who were these aliens? Where did they come from? What did they want? Her team started analyzing the alien transmission. Every word, every sound pattern, every data packet. They worked fast. Time was running out. In orbit, Joe made his first move. The Indomitable launched all its missiles at once. 48 missiles streamed toward the alien fleet. The aliens did not even bother to dodge. Their shields absorbed the impacts easily. The missiles might as well have been fireworks, but Joe was not trying to hurt them. He was testing them, watching how they responded, learning their patterns. He saw the shield frequencies, the response time, the power distribution information. That was the real weapon. The aliens returned fire. Their weapons were devastating. One shot destroyed an entire patrol ship. The crew of 60 vanished in a flash of light. Tigo felt the loss like a punch to the stomach. But he could not stop. He had a mission. He led the remaining ships in a wild dance through space. Dodging, weaving, never staying still. The aliens were powerful but slow. Their big ships turned like floating cities. Cho used that against them. He made them waste ammunition on empty space. Minutes became an hour. 1 hour became 2. Every second bought more time for Earth. Cities evacuated. Children moved to underground shelters. Weapon systems powered up. The military mobilized. Back in her lab, Ha-Jin made a breakthrough. She cracked the alien communication protocols and accessed their data streams. What she found made her blood run cold. The Vexar had conquered 17 other species, 17 civilizations across the galaxy. Each conquest took less than a week. Some species surrendered immediately. Others fought but gave up quickly. The longest resistance lasted only 5 days. The Vexar had calculated Earth's defeat. According to their computers, humanity would surrender within 48 hours, maybe sooner. They expected minimal casualties on both sides. Just another easy conquest. Heian looked at the data and laughed. It was a bitter laugh. The aliens had made a terrible mistake. They had calculated based on their previous conquests, but those species evolved on peaceful worlds, worlds where cooperation meant survival. Where conflict was rare, Earth was different. Humanity evolved fighting the environment, fighting predators, fighting each other. Humans knew war like they knew breathing. It was in their DNA. Surrender was not in their vocabulary. She contacted Earth Defense Command. They needed to know what they faced. The enemy was strong but predictable. They followed rules and protocols. They expected logical behavior. That was their weakness. General Dongmin Koi received her report in the war room deep under the Korean peninsula. He was an old soldier with gray hair and hard eyes. He had fought in 3 wars during his career. He knew how to read an enemy. The general smiled as he read the report. The aliens expected a short fight. They expected humans to be rational, to calculate the odds and surrender. They were about to learn something important about humanity. Humans were not always rational. especially when defending their home. In orbit, Cho lost another ship, then another. His fleet was down to 7 vessels. The aliens moved into position around Earth. They prepared their landing forces. Thousands of dropships launched from the main fleet. Cho had done his job. He bought Earth 6 hours. 6 hours to prepare. 6 hours to evacuate civilians. 6 hours to get ready for war. His communication console lit up. Orders from Earth Defense Command: fall back. Regroup with the main defense fleet. Prepare for the real battle. Tio turned his ship toward Earth. As he flew past the massive alien fleet, he transmitted one message. It broadcast on all frequencies. Every alien ship received it. The message was simple. Just 3 words in English. Come and take it. The alien commanders in their flagship analyzed the message. They did not understand. Humans knew they would lose. The calculations were clear. Why fight a battle they could not win? The Vexar High Command dismissed it as primitive bravado. They had seen it before from other species. It always faded when the real fighting started. They were about to learn their second mistake. Humans did not bluff. The invasion of Earth had begun. The aliens expected an easy victory. They were wrong. Massively, monumentally wrong. The alien dropships fell from the sky like metal rain. They landed in every major city across Earth: New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, and hundreds more. The Vexar had done this before. They knew the strategy. Take the cities and the planet falls. Captain Sujin Lee watched them land in Seoul from her position on top of a skyscraper. She commanded Alpha Company, 200 Marines who were supposed to defend the entire downtown sector. 200 soldiers against thousands of aliens. The math was simple and terrible. Her radio crackled with reports from other units. The aliens were landing everywhere. They moved with mechanical precision. Their armor looked unstoppable. Their weapons cut through concrete like paper. Sujin looked at her Marines, young faces, scared eyes, shaking hands. She thought about telling them it would be okay. But she never lied to her soldiers. Instead, she told them the truth. They were going to fight. Many would die. But every alien they stopped here was one less alien hurting civilians. Every minute they held was one more minute for evacuation. Her Marines nodded. Fear remained in their eyes, but something else joined it. Determination. The first wave of Vexar soldiers marched down the main street. They expected panic. They expected chaos. Instead, they found silence. Empty streets, abandoned buildings. Then the buildings exploded. Sujin had turned the entire downtown into a trap. Buildings were rigged with explosives. Streets had hidden mines. Every corner held an ambush. The aliens walked into a nightmare. The Vexar casualties mounted quickly. Their commanders could not understand it. These primitives were supposed to surrender. Why were they fighting so hard? Why were they so good at it? Across the city, similar scenes played out. The subway system became a maze of death. Sewers turned into ambush tunnels. Parks became kill zones. Every would need to sacrifice themselves just to create an opening, and even then success was not guaranteed. Every captain volunteered. Toyo chose the volunteers carefully. He picked the 3 oldest ships with the most damage, ships that were barely holding together anyway. Their crews transferred to other vessels except for the pilots. 3 pilots who refused to leave. One of them was pilot Mong Yun. She was 26 years old, had a fiancé waiting for her on Mars. She flew an experimental fighter with a fusion reactor that was held together with prayers and duct tape. Ma Young understood mathematics. The odds of surviving this mission were 0. But the odds of humanity surviving without this mission were also 0. When she did the math, the choice was obvious. She recorded a message for her fiancé, told him she loved him, told him to live a good life, told him that she was doing this so people like him could have a future. Then she deleted the message. It was too sad. Instead, she just wrote, "I love you. I'm proud to do this." The operation began at 0300 hours. Joe's battle group launched a full assault on the alien fleet, every weapon firing every missile away. It looked like a desperate final attack. The aliens responded exactly as Taiho predicted. They focused all their attention on the main battle group. While they were distracted, the 3 volunteer ships moved into position. They approached from different angles, flying low and fast, using every trick to avoid detection. Miang was the first to break through. Alien point defense systems tracked her, but too slowly. She was moving too fast, flying too wild. Her fighter screamed through space like a meteor. She saw the cooling relay, a small box on the side of the massive flagship. She pointed her ship at it, pushed her reactor to maximum. The fusion core began to overload exactly as planned. In her last seconds, Myung thought about her fiancé, about the life they would not have, about the children they would not raise. But she also thought about all the people who would live because of this moment. All the families who would survive. Worth it, she whispered. Her fighter hit the relay at near light speed. The fusion reactor detonated. The explosion was massive. It consumed her ship instantly. But more importantly, it destroyed the cooling system. The alien flagship shields began to fail. Not immediately, but in a cascade. One section went down, then another, then another. Within minutes, the most powerful ship in the Vexar fleet was vulnerable. Cho did not waste the opportunity. He directed all fire at the flagship. Missiles, railguns, lasers, everything humanity had. The flagship took damage, real damage. For the first time since arriving at Earth, a Vexar capital ship was hurt. The alien command structure panicked. Their flagship was supposed to be invincible. Their shields were supposed to be impenetrable. But human determination had found a way through. On Earth, the news spread quickly. The flagship was damaged. The aliens were vulnerable. Morale surged. Soldiers who were exhausted found new energy. Civilians who were terrified found hope. General Dongmin Choi saw the reports and smiled. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The aliens had revealed weakness. Now it was time to exploit it. He activated Project Hammer of Dawn. Mining vessels from the asteroid belt began moving toward Earth, not to evacuate, to attack. Each vessel carried millions of tons of rock and metal. They were not warships. They were kinetic weapons. The mining vessels positioned themselves above alien ground forces. Then they released their cargo. Asteroids fell from orbit. Not nuclear weapons, not explosives, just rocks. Very big rocks moving very fast. The impact was devastating. Entire alien formations vanished. Their shields meant nothing against millions of tons of solid matter moving at orbital velocity. Cities were destroyed, but so were the invaders occupying them. It was brutal. It was destructive. It was effective. The Vextar fleet began to retreat from low orbit. They pulled back to a safer distance. For the first time since the invasion began, they were reacting instead of acting. They were responding to human tactics instead of executing their own plans. Captain Sujin Lee watched asteroids fall from her position in the ruins of Seoul. The impacts shook the ground like earthquakes. But when the dust cleared, the alien forces that had been surrounding her position were gone. Her Marines cheered. 45 soldiers who had been fighting without hope suddenly had something to believe in. They were not just surviving anymore. They were winning. In their command ship, the Vexar High Council held an emergency meeting. Their conquest of Earth was supposed to take 2 days. It had been 5 days and they controlled less than 30% of the planet. Their casualties were approaching 100,000 soldiers. The number kept growing. Some council members suggested retreat, cut their losses, find an easier target. But others argued they had committed too much. Reinforcements were coming. They needed to finish this. The High Command made their decision. They would call for a second fleet. Overwhelming force. No more caution. They would crush humanity completely. But as they transmitted their orders, they failed to notice something important. A human intelligence operative had infiltrated their communication network. Officer Yi Song sat in a damaged alien cruiser that had crashed near Bususan. She had spent 2 days working her way through their security systems. Now she had access to everything, their communications, their orders, their plans. She listened to the High Command's decision and smiled coldly. They wanted to send reinforcements. That was fine. She had a gift for them. Yunji uploaded a virus into their network. Not a biological virus like Dr. Park made, a computer virus. It spread through every alien ship silently, waiting, learning, preparing. When the second fleet arrived, they would get a surprise. Their own technology would turn against them. The battle for Earth was far from over, but the tide was turning slowly, painfully. Humans were learning that they could hurt the invaders. And the invaders were learning something far more terrifying. Humans did not know how to quit. The second Vexar fleet emerged from hyperspace like an iron storm. 500 more ships, twice the size of the first invasion force. They positioned themselves around Earth with military precision. The message was clear. This time there would be no mercy. On Earth, people watched the sky fill with alien vessels. After 6 days of brutal fighting, they finally had the invaders slowed. Now the enemy doubled their forces. The hope that had been building began to crack. General Dongman Choi stood in the war room deep beneath the Korean peninsula. Around him, officers monitored screens showing the new fleet. Their faces showed fear. The general's face showed nothing. He had known this moment would come. The aliens would escalate. They would commit everything. That was fine. He had prepared for this exact scenario. The general pressed a button on his console. Across the solar system, hidden weapons activated. Not conventional weapons, something far more dangerous. Project Cerberus had been humanity's final secret. A network of anti-atter weapons buried on asteroids, moons, and deep space stations. Each one powerful enough to destroy a planet. There were 50 of them scattered throughout human space. The general broadcast a message to the Vexar fleet. All channels, maximum power. He wanted every alien to hear this. His message was simple. If Earth dies, you die with us. We have weapons positioned throughout this system. Antimatter weapons. If you destroy our planet, these weapons will activate automatically. They will hunt down every one of your ships. None of you will leave this system alive. To prove his point, he activated one weapon. A small asteroid in the belt exploded with the force of a star. The blast was visible from Earth. The radiation signature was unmistakable. Antimatter. The Vexar High Command received the message and froze. They had antimatter weapons, too. They knew what that signature meant. Humans had somehow built planet-killing weapons and hidden them everywhere. The cost of destroying Earth had just become unacceptable. But they had already committed 2 fleets, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, years of planning. The High Command could not retreat now. They would lose credibility across their empire. Other conquered species might rebel, so they made a different decision. No planetary bombardment. They would take Earth through ground invasion only. Slowly, carefully, they would occupy the planet and force humanity to surrender through attrition. The second wave of dropships began their descent. 10,000 landing craft filled with fresh troops. The aliens were done playing carefully. This would be a war of annihilation. On the ground, Captain Sujin Lee reorganized what remained of her forces. She now commanded survivors from 5 different companies, 300 soldiers who had been fighting for almost a week straight. They were exhausted, running low on ammunition, and facing an enemy that just doubled in size. She gathered her officers and gave them the situation honestly. Reinforcements were not coming. Supplies were limited. The enemy had overwhelming numbers. Most of them would not survive the next week. Her officers nodded. They already knew all that. One lieutenant asked the only question that mattered. "What are our orders?" Sujin smiled. Same as before. Make them pay for every inch. Fight like our families depend on it. Because they do. The new alien forces landed and immediately advanced. They had learned from the first wave. They moved in smaller groups. They checked every building. They advanced slowly. But they still advanced. Sujin had prepared for this. The city was one massive trap. Every street had surprises. Every building was rigged. She had spent the brief respite preparing a nightmare for the invaders. The aliens walked into ambush after ambush. Buildings collapsed on them. Streets exploded beneath them. The sewers they thought were empty were full of human soldiers. The rooftops they thought were secure rained down fire. But this time the Vexar did not falter. They took casualties and kept coming. They lost in hits and sent more. They were willing to pay any price now. Pride demanded it. In orbit, Commander Taejo Kim prepared his own surprise. His battle group was down to 15 ships now, barely enough to threaten a single alien cruiser. But he'd studied the second fleet carefully. He noticed something interesting. The new fleet used quantum communication to coordinate. All their ships were linked in a network. Perfect coordination, perfect timing. It was their strength. It was also their weakness. Officer Yoonji Song had been waiting for this moment. Her virus sat dormant in the alien communication network, waiting for the right time to activate. That time was now. She sent the activation code. The virus woke up. Across the alien fleet, computers began to fail. Not crash, just fail in subtle ways. Navigation had minor errors. Weapon targeting was slightly off. Shield frequencies shifted randomly. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to cause chaos. The Vexar relied on perfect coordination. Suddenly, nothing was perfect. Ships drifted out of formation. Weapons fire missed targets. Communications became garbled. The fleet that had looked unstoppable began to stumble. Joe saw his opportunity. He broadcast a message to every human ship in the system. Every patrol vessel, every cargo hauler, every mining ship, attack now. All weapons, full assault. Hundreds of civilian ships joined the fight. They were not warships, but they had weapons now. Engineer Jin Wuhan had seen to that. Mining lasers, industrial cutters, improvised missiles. Every civilian vessel had become a combatant. The alien fleet found itself under attack from all directions. Not just military vessels, everything. Cargo ships rammed them. Mining vessels shot them with industrial lasers. Even small pleasure craft launched improvised explosives. The Vexar had superior technology, but they faced an enemy who turned everything into a weapon. An enemy who fought with tools not designed for war. An enemy who adapted faster than they could respond. Dr. Hyen Park watched the battle from her lab. Her virus had weakened the alien ground forces. Officer Song's virus had crippled their fleet coordination, but it was not enough. The Vexar still had overwhelming numbers. They were still winning, just slower. She analyzed the data coming in from around the world. Human forces were being pushed back everywhere. Seoul would fall within days, New York within a week. One by one, Earth cities were being conquered. But then she noticed something in the alien communications. Confusion, frustration, fear. The Second Fleet had expected an easy mop-up operation. Instead, they faced the same brutal resistance as the First Fleet. Casualties were mounting faster than predicted. More importantly, she saw messages from other parts of the Vexar Empire. News of Earth's resistance was spreading. Other conquered species were watching. Some were asking questions. If humans could fight back, why couldn't they? Hyjin compiled a complete tactical analysis. Human battle strategies, successful techniques, weakness exploits, everything humanity had learned about fighting the Vexar. She prepared to broadcast it to every corner of the galaxy. Commander Taejo Kim received her package. He understood immediately. This was not just about Earth anymore. This was about every species the Vexar had conquered. He broadcast the analysis on all frequencies, military frequencies, civilian frequencies, even alien frequencies. He wanted everyone to know. The Vexar were not invincible. They could be fought. They could be beaten. Here is how we did it. His message said, here are their weaknesses. Here are our tactics. Take this information, use it. Fight back. The broadcast reached across light years. Conquered worlds received it. Occupied systems heard it. And for the first time in centuries, the Vexar Empire felt something unfamiliar. Fear. On Earth, Captain Sujin Lee led another counterattack. Her forces were down to 200 soldiers, but they fought with renewed determination. The whole galaxy was watching. They could not show weakness now. An alien patrol trapped her squad in a dead-end street. She smiled coldly. They had not learned. Humans did not get trapped. They just turned everything into a battlefield. She detonated charges that brought down both buildings on either side. The aliens were buried under tons of rubble. Her squad climbed through the debris and continued fighting. The Vexar High Command held an emergency session. The third in 2 days, their conquest was stalling again. Despite doubling their forces, despite committing everything, these humans refused to break. Worse, their tactical analysis was now spreading across the galaxy. 17 conquered species were receiving detailed instructions on how to fight back. The Empire was at risk of collapse. One council member suggested the unthinkable: negotiate, offer peace, withdraw before this got worse. The suggestion was met with silence. The Vexar had never negotiated. They conquered or destroyed. To negotiate with humans would admit weakness. But what choice did they have? As the debate continued, more reports came in. Rebellions were starting on 3 conquered worlds. More were preparing. The broadcast from Earth had lit a spark that threatened to burn down their entire empire. The transmission arrived on all frequencies. The Vexar Supreme Council itself was requesting a meeting, not demanding, requesting. It was the first time in their history they had asked another species for anything. General Dongmin Choi read the message 3 times. His officers stood around him in silence. The war room that had been filled with chaos for 9 days was suddenly quiet. The aliens wanted to negotiate. After everything, after 9 days of brutal fighting, after losing nearly 200,000 soldiers, after facing antimatter weapons and computer viruses and impossible human determination, they finally wanted Totok. The general looked at his staff. They had prepared for many scenarios: invasion, occupation, even extinction, but negotiation. That was unexpected. He approved the meeting, but not on an alien ship, not in space, here on Earth, in the ruins of Sol. Let the Vexar Council see what their invasion had caused. Let them walk through the destruction they caused. Days later, a small alien shuttle landed in the middle of what used to be a park. The Supreme Council emerged, 5 beings in elaborate armor. They looked at the ruined city around them. Buildings were collapsed. Streets were cratered. Evidence of battle was everywhere. Human soldiers surrounded them. Not threatening, just present. Captain Sujin Lee led the security detail. Her uniform was dirty. Her face showed exhaustion, but her rifle was clean and her eyes were alert. The aliens were escorted to a temporary command center. General Choi waited for them there. He did not stand when they entered. He did not offer refreshments. He simply gestured to chairs and waited. The lead council member spoke first. They wanted to end hostilities. They proposed a ceasefire, immediate withdrawal of all forces, returned to pre-invasion status. General Choi listened without expression. When they finished, he responded simply. No, the aliens seemed confused. They were offering peace. Why would humans refuse? The general explained. Peace required more than just stopping the fighting. It required justice, reparations for the damage, guarantees against future aggression, release of any prisoners, full disclosure about their empire and their other conquests. Most importantly, they needed to free every species they had conquered. The council members looked at each other. They had come prepared to offer peace. They had not expected demands, especially not demands that would dismantle their entire empire. But they were not in a position to argue. 3 more rebellions had started in the last 2 days. Their military was stretched thin. Their resources were depleted, and these humans showed no signs of surrendering. The negotiations lasted for 3 weeks. Dr. Hia Jin Park led the human delegation. She was a scientist, not a diplomat, but she understood the aliens better than anyone else. She had studied them, learned their language, decoded their culture. During the talks, she made an important discovery. The Vexar came from a peaceful world, a planet with few predators and abundant resources. They evolved cooperation as their primary survival strategy. War was foreign to them until they developed space travel. When they encountered other species, they found them similar, peaceful, logical, easy to conquer. They built an empire not through military genius, but through overwhelming technological advantage. Every species they met surrendered quickly, because fighting seemed pointless. Then they met humanity. Hi. Jin explained Earth's history to them. The asteroid impacts, the ice ages, the volcanic eruptions, the mass extinctions. Humanity evolved on a world that tried to kill them every few thousand years. Surrender meant death. Fighting was the only logical choice. Humans learned to fight before they learned to farm. They mastered war before they mastered writing. Combat was not just a skill. It was survival instinct coded into their DNA. The Vexar Council listened and finally understood. They had not been defeated by better weapons or superior tactics. They had been defeated by a fundamental difference in psychology. Humans did not calculate odds of victory. They fought because not fighting was unthinkable. The peace treaty was signed on Earth. All Vexar forces withdrew. Reparations were paid. And most importantly, the 17 conquered species were given their freedom. Dr. Hei Jin Park became Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Collective. She traveled to the former Vexar capital and helped establish a new government, one based on cooperation rather than conquest. Commander Taejo Kim was promoted to Fleet Admiral. He oversaw the construction of a new United Terran Navy. Not just patrol ships this time, real warships. Because humanity had learned an important lesson. Peace required strength. His first task was training. Not just training humans, training representatives from all the newly freed species, teaching them human tactics, human determination, human refusal to quit. Captain Sujin Lee became commandant of the Galactic Marine Corps Training Academy. Aliens from dozens of species came to learn from her. They wanted to understand how humans fought, how they turned cities into fortresses, how they made every civilian a combatant. She taught them tactics and strategy, but more importantly, she taught them mindset. how to fight when losing, how to turn disadvantages into advantages, how to never, ever surrender. Engineer Jin Wuhan led a technological revolution. He worked with alien scientists to combine human ingenuity with alien technology. The results were remarkable. Weapons that adapted in real time, ships that could repair themselves, defenses that learned from attacks. Neither humans nor aliens could have created these innovations alone. Together, they pushed the boundaries of what was possible. The former Vexar Empire collapsed within a year, not through war, through choice. Species after species declared independence. Some formed new alliances. Others chose isolation, but all of them were free. The Vexar themselves changed. Without an empire to maintain, they focused on science and art. They became explorers rather than conquerors. Some even joined the Terran Navy, wanting to learn from the species that had defeated them. Officer Yunji Song became the head of Galactic Intelligence. Her virus had crippled the Vexar fleet. Now she used her skills to protect the new alliance, building networks, sharing information, making sure no species could threaten others without warning. Years after the invasion, Ambassador Park hosted a memorial service on Earth. Representatives from 30 species attended. They gathered in Seoul in the park where the first negotiations had taken place. A monument stood there now, a simple stone column with names carved into it. The names of everyone who died defending Earth, soldiers and civilians, adults and children. Thousands of names, each one representing a life lost, a sacrifice made. Among them was pilot Mong Yun, the young woman who crashed her fighter into the alien flagship, who gave her life to create an opening. Her name was near the top, right next to the words, "We remember." General Choi, now retired, gave a speech. He talked about sacrifice, about determination, about the price of freedom. But he also talked about the future, about building something better, about learning from past mistakes. The galaxy had changed. Before humanity conquered, species accepted their fate. They calculated odds and surrendered logically. But humans showed them a different path. Fight, resist, never give up. The message spread, not through force, through example. Other species watched humanity and learned that technology was not everything, learned that determination could overcome superior firepower, learned that freedom was worth fighting for. Admiral Teo Kim stood on the bridge of the new flagship, the UTS Indomitable II, named after his old patrol ship, the ship that started everything. He looked out at Earth now fully recovered, cities rebuilt, population growing, humanity thriving. Around Earth, orbited ships from a dozen different species, allies now, friends working together to protect each other, building a new future together. A young ensign approached him fresh from the academy. She asked the question that everyone wondered. Did we really change the galaxy? One species against an empire? Teo smiled. We did not change the galaxy alone. We showed others they could change it themselves. We proved that resistance was possible, that determination mattered, that freedom was worth fighting for. The ensign nodded, then asked another question. What if someone else tries to conquer us? Another empire? The admiral's smile faded. His eyes became hard. Then they will learn the same lesson, the same massive, monumental mistake. Never underestimate a species that fought for survival since the beginning. Never assume technology beats determination, and never ever invade Earth. Because humans do not surrender. They do not calculate odds. They do not quit when losing. They fight, they adapt, they win. Not through superior weapons, but through superior will. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not technology, not weapons, but the knowledge that freedom was worth any price. That resistance was always possible. That you never stopped fighting as long as you could still breathe. The Vexar learned this lesson the hard way. They invaded Earth expecting an easy conquest. They got 9 days of hell. They got tactics they could not predict. They got weapons made from tools. They got an enemy that turned every disadvantage into an advantage. Most importantly, they got a species that refused to lose. Even when losing seemed certain, the galaxy remembered. Stories spread about the human resistance. About Captain Sujin Lee holding Seoul against impossible odds.